Hello and welcome back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you are watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I've got some breaking news coming out from the IDF, or Israel's Defense Forces, their military down in Gaza. So they're reporting that apparently much of Hamas's tunnels in the Gaza Strip are still in good functional state. So they've been assessing these tunnels to check them out and see if they're still usable. And apparently, Hamas could still be using these tunnels. Now, this is very interesting that this story is coming out because we understand that the IDF, when they first moved into the Gaza Strip, they started on the northern side of the strip, right? And they worked their way further towards the center and then eventually the southern portion, which is where they're at right now for the most part. Now they're in Rafah, the southern side of the Gaza Strip. And then there's been lots of reports over the last couple months that Hamas started to reappear on the northern side and now the central side. And we just did a report, I think it was just yesterday, that in Gaza City, it's kind of on the northern side of Gaza, that the IDF had to relaunch another operation in that area, and I think also in eastern Khan Yunis, which is more on the southern portion, like southern central area of the Gaza Strip. Okay, so now Israel's having to make a U-turn and head back to these areas where they previously supposedly said they were done with Hamas in these areas, and all they had left was Rafah. Now all of a sudden Hamas is popping back up in these areas, and they're having to re-engage with them in these parts of the Gaza Strip that they supposedly had already been done with. So this may explain why Hamas has been able to kind of move around here, and maybe why Israel thought that they pretty much finished up with Hamas in these areas like the northern and central side, and they started to work their way south, is because Hamas was probably still hiding out in these tunnels. Okay, so they're even saying that even in Khan Yunis, many of the tunnels that were targeted by the IDF have been fixed. Okay, and apparently they've got factories in the area that can produce concrete to rebuild the tunnels and also maybe even build new tunnels. So they're kind of like rats in a way, okay? Like they if they continue combing the ground level of Gaza, if the Hamas fighters are in the tunnels, they're not even going to know that below their feet, where they're up here fighting with their tanks and everything like that, dropping bombs everywhere. Hamas is down, safely in these tunnels underneath the Gaza Strip. So this is obviously a big problem for Israel, and they're starting to talk about this now, and they're actually stating that this is going to be one of their big war objectives, is to start destroying these tunnels. So I want to talk some more about this today, and let's go ahead and get into this. I've got an article here pulled up for you. This is on the Times of Israel. It says, IDF assesses much of Hamas tunnel network still in good functional state, says report. Military said to believe Hamas retains limited ability to approach, possibly cross-border. Civil security heads disturbed want destruction of tunnels to be top priority. So something that's a major risk here as well, too, is that these tunnels could reach very close to the Israeli border, and that's something that they're worried about as well, is that Hamas could launch another attack on southern Israel again. If Hamas is able to use these tunnel networks to reach the border of Israel, or at least get very close to it, they could launch another attack on their population again, similar to what we saw on October 7th. So it says here, after 9 months of war, much of Hamas's tunnel network is still in a good functional state in many parts of Gaza, and the terror group still has the capacity to organize raids close to the border with Israel and possibly even cross it. Okay, so that's why they're saying here that they could get close to the border with Israel and possibly even cross the border using these tunnels. The Hamas tunnels are in good shape in the refugee camps of central Gaza, most of Rafah in the south, and Shajaya in the north. According to Channel 12 News, which cited what it said was a recently written IDF assessment. In Khan Yunis, in the south of the Strip, many tunnels that were targeted by the IDF had been fixed, as the factories in the area that produce concrete to build the tunnels, the report said. Even though the IDF has been focused on tackling Hamas in Rafah in recent weeks, functional tunnels in the area enable terror operatives to get close to the Israeli border, and only a few routes have been destroyed on the Philadelphia route along the Gaza-Egypt border, according to the report. Tunnels in Gaza City are in medium to good state and enable Hamas to gain proximity to the Israeli border, it added. Overall, were the war to end now, the report said, Hamas still has the capacity to organize an incursion close to the border and perhaps even cross it, not on the scale in the past. The report noted that the IDF remains heavily focused on tackling the Hamas tunnel network and is... Oh, sorry about the pop-up. However, the report said However, the report said that heads of the civil defense squads for communities along the border who have read the document are troubled by its findings and want to work of neutralizing the tunnels done as a first priority. So again, one of their big priorities here is going to be to neutralize these tunnels, considering that it's obviously another threat to Israel again. Imagine if Hamas were to use these tunnels and attack Israel again, like what we saw back in October. This would be absolutely horrifying if this were to happen again. And we just had a report coming out just the other day from Hamas as well. I think it was one of their top like spokesmen for their group, and he had come out and said that they would have another surprise October 7th attack on Israel, and we'd have to wait and see what that was going to be. And they said it was going to be much worse than what we saw on October 7th. So Hamas apparently is planning something else, and maybe that's why the IDF is starting to focus on these tunnels as well, because this obviously poses a threat to their nation. So the civil defense squads were among the first to respond to Hamas's October 7th massacre, and many fought for hours to defend their communities alone before security forces could muster a response. Nonetheless, the report noted that military chiefs, given the achievements to date in the war, still said that that if a deal can be negotiated with Hamas, it is right to stop now to get back the hostages. Since launching a ground offensive in the wake of the October 7th massacre, in which Hamas-led terrorists killed some 1,200 people and took around 251 hostages, Israeli forces have worked to destroy the tunnels, uncovering more and more of the Gaza ruling terror organization's underground network. Senior Israeli defense officials in January assessed that Hamas's Gaza tunnel network was between 350 and 450 miles long. Look, that's absolutely insane. 400 miles long. Wow. An astounding figure given that the enclave is only some 140 square miles in total size. So they've got massive tunnel networks all over the place going in different directions if it's only 140 square miles. And they've got almost 450 miles long of tunnels. That's insane. A defense official told the Times of Israel that it could take years to dismantle the tunnels, noting that underground passages must be mapped and checked for booby traps and hostages before Israeli forces can destroy them. So that's a big problem too. They basically just have to monitor these tunnels and try to locate where they're at and where they actually go as well, because we know too that there's something like 120 hostages if there's that many still alive. Probably there's much less than that from what's been told. I think there could have only been like maybe 40 hostages or maybe a little bit more that are still remaining to be alive. Yeah, Israel's going to have to keep an eye on this and watch these tunnels, because if these hostages are still in these tunnels, they can't exactly destroy them yet. So this is going to be a big deal for Israel. And again, we've come out and stated this many times. There's been multiple reports that this war down here is going to go on for a very, very long time. Okay, we're talking potentially years to completely eradicate Hamas and remove them from the Gaza Strip, because again, if there's these tunnels down here, it's going to be very, very hard to destroy them. It almost kind of reminds me of the Vietnam War. I don't know if any of you ever played any video games back in the day that were like Vietnam style, but there'd be a lot of games that would show tunnels and stuff, because that's how the Vietnamese would fight. Okay, the North Vietnamese army, they would build tunnel networks, massive tunnel networks everywhere, and that allowed them to stay in the fight and have the advantage against the enemy. So that's exactly what Hamas has done here as well in the Gaza Strip. So it's definitely going to be difficult for a modern fighting force to go up against some group that is hiding underground in tunnels. Okay, so that's why I wanted to share this update here with you. So it looks like this is going to be a top priority for the IDF down in Gaza, is to, after they eliminate Hamas, they're going to have to start destroying these tunnel networks, so that way they can't be attacked ever again. And obviously these tunnel networks are not being used for any like civilian purposes. They're obviously being used by Hamas. So let me know what you think down below regarding this topic. This is definitely a pretty big development. If you got something out of this update, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell, that way YouTube can notify you. With that, I hope y'all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless, and we'll see you in the next one.